We're going to go through the forms on the right-hand side of the folder. Kind of quickly, I think, and then spend a little more time on supervision itself and the learning contract and the evaluation. The first sheet is suggested topics for field instruction. And these are just ideas. When you meet with a student, sometimes it's hard to remember what you need to talk about. And you can always pull stuff off this sheet that'll be helpful. The students are responsible for completing this weekly supervisory agenda. We ask that they complete this ahead of time and give it to you before you meet. We know that doesn't happen a whole lot, but that's okay. The idea is to get some thoughts down on paper so that they don't forget what it is they want to talk about. Same thing with you. If you have issues you want to talk to the student about, jot it down before you meet so you don't forget. The students do have to turn these in, and so they do keep this. This is in the field manual, and you have these handouts. Now, the first 3 weeks, we've already identified areas for you to discuss. So there's 3 sheets that are already partially complete. The first one is you're certainly going to do some type of an orientation to your agency. We'd like the student to share the syllabi with you so that you know what they're responsible for and understand what kind of assignments they're going to have that make sense for field. Also, we'd like you all to discuss the expectation and plan for client contact, length of time for shadowing, training, and how much client contact will actually occur. Our students are itching to get in there and work with people. And so if you can make that happen sooner than later, that makes for a good experience. We've talked a lot about how much shadowing should be done. It's really so individual, but my belief is you keep them really close to you for a week or so, and then you begin to let them go and you stand back and watch. And once they've been able to do some things to your satisfaction and you feel comfortable, then you can step back and they can do some things on their own. You can always just drop in and see how things are going. We try to help students understand that supervision and oversight is a very important part of becoming a social worker. It's not that anybody's checking up, but in a way it is, because every time you see your student, you're kind of evaluating where they are. Just like every time they see their client, they're kind of evaluating where the client is. And often students can understand that kind of a parallel process that's going on. The second week of field, we encourage you to talk about learning styles. There are a number of little quizzes that you can take online. I know that North Carolina State has one. If you Google learning styles, that'll be one of the first ones that comes up. It's probably, it's been a long time since I did it, but it's short, didn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes. It was easily understood, and you could assign your student to do it, and you do it, and then you talk about it. I think it's really important to understand where everybody's coming from. And then the third week, you're going to start talking about the learning contract. And we're going to go into detail with that in just a couple of minutes. So, as a reminder, the student completes this. You actually sign it. The student signs it. And then this is reviewed by the field liaison.
Is there a need for us to keep these?
No,
Like a copy, there's no need for us to keep a copy.
not unless you want to. Actually, if you look in that liability form on the dark green paper that I just basically held up and said you're responsible for everything your students do, on there's an idea that if you keep client records in one place, but you want to keep some personal notes, that weekly supervisory sheet is a great place for personal notes. They used to have to be subpoenaed, but I don't think they do anymore. I think you're expected to bring everything if you were ever asked to go into court. Do you ever go into court much? You're about the only one that I can think of that might.
I was there 2 hours this morning.
I'm sorry, how much?
I was there for 2 hours this morning.
Okay, so it's a very regular occasion. So would you be required to bring in your personal notes if there was an issue?
The city attorney doesn't look like me to take them on the witness stand with me.
Okay.
I'll make like just little handwritten things that are generic, but I don't take my laptop or my iPad up there.
Right. Yeah. Because then it's open.
Yeah, and I really don't want to hand them mine.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind.
To kind of tag on to that with CASA, like we're encouraged through our training, and Megan has been encouraged this the same way. Her personal notes are to be kept separate because we take our file with us to court.
Right.
But the personal notes stay at the office. So.
Good. Okay. So that would be about the only thing I could think of that would be helpful for you all to keep these. The next form is the evaluation of the field practicum experience, and this is one page of, I don't know, quite a few. It is in the field manual. Let's see if I can find it easily. It starts on page 63 and goes on and on and on and on. What was that, Mary? I know it is. It is. I know it does. It's very time consuming. We are aware of that. I know I'm looking at trying to shorten the MSW1. So I expect that's something that Pam will be working on. But it goes from page 63 until 76. And if you'll notice on page 75 and 76, 75 is the evaluation at midterm. This is the signature sheet for that. We use the same evaluation form for midterm as for final. So you'll need to make a copy of this before you fill it out for the final. And then the signature sheet is page 74. Larry?
Jane, just a note for anyone that's not done this, I always tell my student at the very beginning of the semester, at midterm, do not expect 5 and probably not 4s. Because you haven't learned everything that there is to learn by then. And so, everyone wants an A, everyone wants something perfect anytime they look at it, and that just takes the edge off on the front end.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They know what they're working with, but please don't expect midterm to look like the end of the semester.
Right.
Who fills out this?
Pardon?
Who fills out this? The task manager or the field?
Everybody. Yeah, that's set up so that the student assesses themselves, field instructor assesses the student, and the task supervisor assesses the student.
All on the same form.
All on the same form.
Wow. Okay.
And it's very helpful. It's intimidating the first time you do it, and you've seen, here's your student's evaluation, and you're thinking, well, they think they're doing this better than I think they're doing it. But it's good for conversation. That's really good discussion material. Most of the time what you're going to find is the student thinks they're not doing nearly as well as they're doing. Most of them rate themselves much lower. And so that too is good for conversation.
Recommendation, who fills it out first? Who does their piece first? Do you make a recommendation on that?
You know, it's so, I think it kind of goes,
I've done it both ways, and it's kind of nice to have the students put their stuff down first to kind of see where they're at.
mm-hmm.
Is there a charity Shelton? No.
Nope.
Trying to find somebody to give them their credit card.
Ooh. And what's your experience? You liked seeing the students' assessment of themselves.
Comments. I like to see my tax supervisor's comments. I kind of like when we do it that way, when I put my piece in last,
Okay.
But I think I've done it both ways.
And what made you like you liked just seeing those things before you did it?
What they say, we just go over, it's not as, if I got it in my hand and study it over and see what they say. And, of course, I like to make comments on every,
And we like comments.
especially if I'm going to make a lower mark. I'm going to make some, hopefully instructive kind of comments that are going to let the student know what I expect or why this
Exactly.
mark.
We really like comments on these. Doesn't take much. You don't have to put in a whole lot. These can be filled out online, can be saved and then sent to the next person. So it makes it easy. But it's helpful if we know what you're thinking when you mark them a certain way and they know what you're thinking too. Larry, how have you done it? Do you usually have the student do it first?
I do. I've tried it both ways as well, but by having the student do it first, it gives me a little clearer, honest picture of maybe what they're thinking of their progress at that point. If I do it first, they may think differently. They're a little less likely to differ with me simply because I'm a field instructor. They have to get up their guts to differ with their field instructor, but this way it's a little more honest discussion. Come in and say, I actually see you having made a little more progress than this, or tell me what makes you think that this is where you're at, because I see it a little differently, and so it just works better for me to have the student do it first.
Okay. Mary, what have you done?
I usually have the student to do it first too, and then task supervisor if possible. I just like that better. I think it does kind of, you have that opportunity to reflect. And then the student, I think you get a clear picture of where the student sees themselves.
Yeah.
One thing I would add there, just be sure to talk to the student about it before the liaison visit, particularly I think if there's anything that might be, if there's a lower mark or something, I think it's good to talk to them. I've had situations where the field instructor didn't just hand it off, and then, the liaison's trying to facilitate that, so.
Yeah, that can be pretty tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, what do you do?
I always have the student do it first.
Okay. Sounds pretty much like that's what people do. Are you okay? I stuck it in my pocket. Okay. I'm not used to this. We're taping this so that we can put it online for folks who were not able to make it. We're trying to get more and more stuff online. Other questions about evaluations. Evaluating students is hard. It doesn't come natural to most people. It's a matter of putting yourself in that role as a teacher. And I think that's the important piece, that you are their teacher. Whether you're the field instructor or the task supervisor, you are teaching them and You are teaching them to be social workers, not workers at Good Sam. You're not teaching them a specific job, although they're doing a specific job. The role of the social work student is to learn to be a good social worker so that when she leaves the river, she'll be able to go to Good Sam and do a really good job, even though things are a little different. So if you think of yourself as a teacher, I think that can be helpful.
Is it a problem if NA is marked on there? Because there's always a couple of things on here that they don't have the opportunity to do within our agency.
That's true, unfortunately, in a lot of agencies. But what kinds of things are you thinking of?
We don't do a lot of policy kind of things at our agency. I want them hands-on with kids as opposed to, and then they may run across a policy or something that we do and they have questions about it, or they may have a suggestion or something, but they're just not really involved in that sort of thing.
I think if you could set aside a few minutes in your supervisory meetings with them, every few weeks, to talk about a policy that is impacting the kids
Okay.
or your agency, to make it bigger. Sometimes there are agency policies that can be really helpful to discuss. I would expect that would be true in the library. Yeah, because you're really working with people who are brand new to this kind of work. And so you're going to need to talk with your student fairly regularly about the policies and how they're working and does she or he have input on making it better. But I think overall, you want to look at the policies that affect the clients in general, like women who are homeless or mostly homeless, have very low income, have nowhere to go to get much help, and they come to the river. Well, what kind of policies could affect them? Did it hurt them when Tennessee didn't take the Medicare waiver thing? I'm sorry, I don't know the title of that.
Yeah. They didn't opt out, they opted out.
Yes, they opted out. And I know that's affected a lot of very indigent people, very poor people. And so that would be a policy you would probably want to talk about with your student.
And definitely client rights. I mean, that's like at the top, of ours is client rights and problem-solving procedures. They've got to know that.
Yes, good. So I expect, Matt, that you're doing it and you're not thinking of it in that way. Because if you think about it, policy really runs what we do in agencies. It certainly runs what we do in the university, whether it's state policy or TBR policy or CSWE policy, our accrediting body, telling us. What other areas do you typically find that are difficult? And this doesn't list all of them, so going to the form itself will probably be more helpful. These are based on competencies also. A few years ago, the Council on Social Work Education changed the way they evaluate programs, and instead of evaluating what we put into the program, what classes we taught, what our expectations were, they changed it to where we are now rating competency. So they want to know that our students are competent when they graduate from our programs. So that's what these are. Apply social work ethical principles to guide practice, professional practice. Apply social work ethical principles to guide, that's the same one. I see they did. Different description. The form is very different than the MSW eval. I apologize. I'm not nearly as familiar with this. But these are based on the actual competencies. Students should be able to think critically, and they should be able to understand what policies underlie the work they're doing with clients. They should be able to assess, engage, treat, and evaluate clients. They should understand diversity in their work with clients. Identify as a professional social worker and conduct oneself accordingly. So these are the kinds of things that we're working to making them competent. Yeah. Other questions or thoughts?
Just a statement. You talked about putting ourselves in the role of a teacher in terms of doing the evaluation, but it also teaches them that when they go out in the work world, they're going to be evaluated.
Exactly.
That's a regular practice. So this is just practice for reality.
It is. It is. That's good. I'm glad you made that point. Yes, we're all evaluated all the time. Let me skip over the next one for just a minute and get to the next two. The time report is included here. Students do need to keep up with their hours. They can just put this right along with their calendar and keep up with it that way. We do keep track of this. We do require this to be turned in at the end of the semester. This is something that stays in their record after they've graduated. And you have to sign off on it. There's a line for you. And if you are a task supervisor, you will be the one that will be signing off because they'll be with you. The next form is the confidentiality form, and we require all of our students to sign this, even if you have one yourself at your agency. And we point out to the students that last sentence, this agreement shall be binding even after the termination of my field instruction experience. This is forever. Okay. I have asked Dr. Mullins if she wouldn't mind talking about the learning contract, simply because I haven't used this in a very long time. I'll start out and then you can jump in on the specifics, okay?
Yeah, whatever you need.
Okay, so the learning contract is the roadmap that students follow while they're in their internship. And the idea is that they write specific goals or objectives and tasks. And it blends with the evaluation form so that all of it makes sense to the student. It should all make sense to you all when you do your evaluations. You're not looking at fruits and vegetables. We want the students to do the vast majority of the writing on this, but they need your help because you know what they're going to be able to do in the agency, and they don't. So when you first talk with them about it, have them tell you what kinds of things they're hoping to do, and then you can take some time to think about it. You can do that this next week when you have your first meeting. They can be thinking about it, you can be thinking about it, you can figure out whether it's going to work well in your agency. And if it's not going to work well, is there another place, a sister agency that they could go and do something at that would be similar? We want them to identify what strengths they're coming in with and also what obstacles they may have that might prevent them or might make it more difficult for them to meet their learning goals. For example, you may find that you have a student who's working full-time in addition to being in field. It doesn't happen terribly much at the undergraduate level, but it does happen. And you'll hear about a student who goes to, maybe he or she works in a group home and they're there all night, 5 nights a week, or 10 nights in a row, and then they have 5 days off or something. That's good information for you. You need to know that kind of thing. Even if they're working a part-time job, that could impact what's going on in your agency. Another thing you need to be aware of is if there are any family members at home that require special needs that your student is responsible for. Young children, disabled family members, older parents or grandparents, and they're the main caretaker. So find out those kinds of things. And then, oddly enough, things like a car. Does the student have a reliable car? Or is the car breaking down every 2 weeks? And what's the student going to be able to do about that? Because that's going to impact how they handle a job. And you're like the last step before that job for pay. So don't be afraid to talk to them about these kinds of things. The more open that you can build this relationship with your student, the better they're going to be able to tell you what's really going on with them. The students that come into field and they're lockstep and they're like this, those are the students that scare me the most because they don't share what's really happening. And so we may not know that there's something very critical going on in their life. Typically, what happens is field is stressful and there's going to be a blow up at some point. And then it ends up being so much bigger than it needed to be if we had just learned this information earlier. We don't like blow-ups. We know you don't like blow-ups. It happens. We don't want you to not address something because it might blow up. In fact, we'd like you to address it when it's really little. I had a field instructor, a number of years ago, and things went on and on and on during the semester, and they finally just blew up, and it was a big blow. And we were talking after it all happened and after everything was settled. And I said, so what was your first clue that there might have been an issue? And she said, the student got in my car with me and asked me if I didn't feel embarrassed to be driving a Cadillac. And I thought, wow, that's pretty much of a prejudiced statement. And I wanted to say, and you didn't say anything. Why didn't you say anything? Well, the field instructor didn't want to hurt the student's feelings. So it started that way. And then there were other little things that wouldn't have amounted to anything, but they weren't addressed because the field instructor wanted to be really kind and nice to the student. And the student ended up leaving the country for a while, and nobody knew she was gone or where she was or what she was doing. And it became very, very serious. So anything that's little, go ahead and talk about it. There's always ways to talk about those things. Talk about the positive things that you're seeing first, and then bring in the stuff that you're concerned about. But that's an issue that should have been discussed immediately. I know of another field instructor whose student showed up very bright on straight A's through school, on top of everything, and she came into field. The first week, everything was fine. The second week, she had to leave early 2 days that week. The third week, she was going to be late 2 days, and she had to leave early 2 days. And the field instructor didn't want to hurt her feelings and thought, well, it's not a real big deal. So nothing was said. And midway through the semester, the field instructor got a call from the liaison saying, I'm going to come and make a visit and I want to make sure that everything's going well. Have you had any issues? Well, yeah, there's this stack of issues over here that haven't been discussed yet. And here comes the field liaison. So try to keep that from happening, because then you don't know, well, do I talk about it or do I not talk about it? This is all about the students learning. If they don't learn that that's inappropriate behavior, then we have failed them. And that's not right. We need to be responsible and go ahead and take that deep breath and go, you know, when you tell me that, or when you ask me if I don't feel bad driving a Cadillac, that really makes me question what your values are. This is an 8-year-old Cadillac, and it was actually my father's, and I inherited it when he died. And would you feel funny about working with a client who was driving a Cadillac? What would that say to you? And if I don't do that, then I've really missed an opportunity, a teachable moment. Comments, questions? Okay, I kind of got off track. The next part is areas for enhancement, and these are things that you want to talk about that have not been identified in the learning contract. And then the field instructor resources. There are tons of articles out there that students can read. There's great things on YouTube that they can watch. And you've got a wealth of information in your brain. Every one of you do. And you've been doing it for a while and you know what you're doing. So you're a great resource for our students. Now, to get to the nitty-gritty of it, Mary, would you mind talking about the writing of it, please?
What I just kind of wanted to go over the handout that's available. Basically, we're back to looking at the objectives of what we expect our students are going to be able to demonstrate at the end of the placement. So the actual contract has a list of student learning objectives, and the center section is really where the decisions and the writing portion comes in with the actual tasks that students will do in the course of learning more about this and being able to hopefully demonstrate back to you that they have achieved these objectives and can demonstrate competency in those particular areas. So I know several years ago, probably a couple of field instructors ago, because this is usually a difficult task for students. It's difficult. What is in the pages before that is actually some samplings of different types of activities that can be done. Now, what students try to do is to just look at this as a menu and they pick, well, I want to do these things, and that fills in the number I need under that particular area. Well, we really don't want them to do that. Now, there are some things that are pretty, would be consistent across most field agencies. You know, they can all read the Code of Ethics or refer back to that or have a conversation with you about the Code of Ethics in just their day-to-day practice. But they need to identify some pretty specific things related to your agency. And that's where I like to see students get, kind of, make it more about what they're learning in the agency and the actual activities that they can do there. Because we all know that, each agency is going to be full of resources and opportunities for students. And this is where, they're trying to do this, though, in the first few weeks. So that's where they're going to need your help to kind of help guide them. We gave them a whole list of different things to kind of stimulate their thoughts, to kind of help you think about that.
But as Jane said earlier, don't think just inside, the boundaries of your agency. So as a field liaison, usually when I do a midterm visit, that's when I talk to, I kind of want to hear what the student's been doing and what kind of opportunities they've had, and try to pick out maybe some of those areas they haven't had. Like group situations, that's usually one. It's really, really hard to find those. And so we may talk about that and just kind of brainstorm. I had a student I'm thinking about last summer was at the cancer center. There wasn't necessarily a group situation there, but they had lots of support groups and things like that running out of the hospital. So she could go right across the street and observe some group activities and at least get some observation time in, just to kind of see that process play out. So even if it's just one little activity for a couple hours, that's great. And if you need help, trying to figure those things out, your field liaisons will definitely kind of help you with that. Encourage students to think about the assignments that they need to do. They're going to have some pretty specific assignments for their field seminar. And those pieces of those assignments should show up on their learning contract. I thought about the policy. Part of, two particular assignments that they do. One is their agency presentation, which they need to be looking at the agency policy and kind of thinking about that, where that agency is placed in terms of the larger policies or legislation, just how that impacts the agency and the functioning of the agency. But then another assignment is a case study assignment where they're actually looking at a case situation, and of course, policy should be a part of that. So they're going to be writing that stuff up. So just, adding in the conversation and supervision about that assignment at that particular time that they're working on that piece, will satisfy everything. And it'll give you an opportunity, to make sure they're comfortable talking about that. Because just want to keep in mind, you're training social workers, and we want them to be well balanced. We want them to understand policy. We want them to know how to use research to their advantage in a practice situation, how to find other resources, all that kind of stuff. So, think about enriching their experiences. Use what you have at the agency, but then, think what else they can do. At the same time, we don't want to add on, extra assignments to the student where you're having them to read a book every week or something like that. But, sending them a link to some article or something every now and then, if you run across something related, that's going to enrich it, I think, is a really good thing to do. But with the learning contract, I encourage you to, ask the student about it in the first few weeks, make sure that they're clear on what they need to do. Look at it ahead of time. They're going to have a deadline that they need to turn it in to the field liaison. So when you see the syllabus, you'll see deadlines and things like that. I would ask to see it ahead of time, because you want an opportunity to say, well, this activity might really be better than, you sit here reading a manual all day or something. And, kind of brainstorm from there. So I think that's good to do it. But then it should be a living, breathing document throughout this whole semester. So even once it's there, there's a spot, the last column is the dates completed. So it's almost like they should be, checking this stuff off, referring back, review this from time to time to see what areas are still lacking. I kind of do the same thing. I use the midterm evaluation to kind of do the same thing too, and where you start to see, well, we really haven't dealt much with policy or whatever. We haven't really had a lot of conversations about theory, so we'll be more intentional I think that's a good point. But if you're continuously looking at this, students put a lot of work into this. It's a lot of work to do it. I remember what it was like as a student. I despised doing this. I understand now why we were doing it. So we want to make sure that it's useful to the student and it's useful to you, because it can, kind of help you in guiding the student through. So, and there are, under the tasks, there's numbers. Like the first one is 4 items. I would say that students should have at least 4 items there. But if there needs to be more there, that's okay. I try to hit, I wouldn't let them buy with 2 because there's always more. And again, it's living, it's breathing. If you need to change something up, new opportunities come along. I encourage to put students on there, so then they're intentionally thinking about the stuff that they're doing in relation to the learning objectives, particularly any kind of trainings or workshops and things like that are wonderful. But, so questions?
Just one comment to help everybody's sanity with it. Now, I like what you said about trying to make it specific to what they're doing, using language that's specific to that. Sometimes I try to ask the student too, how are you going to know when this is completed? For example, one thing we do is adoption. So if they say, learn about adoption disruption, how are we going to know that? So instead of that, they may want to say, read 2 articles about adoption disruption and discuss in supervision, So, hey, we know we've got it.
Yeah, it's really amazing. We've spent all this time training the students how to write goals, how to write objectives, how to, do a treatment plan. And when it comes down to, doing their own kind of treatment plan of, what they're going to do across the semester, they kind of lose focus on what is, how to write those very specific objectives and tasks. And so that is a very good point.
Okay, just for a few minutes. I don't even know. Have to get my phone to see what time it is. Okay. For the last few minutes, what are your biggest concerns? What are your biggest worries about taking this on, especially if you're brand new? But even if you've done it before, what are your biggest concerns?
My biggest one is this is my first time in years. So it's been like this from doing this. And at Frontier Health, we're a large agency, but we're broken down into different divisions. So what I do is with a different part of where the student is going to be. Vonda's going to be the task supervisor. So, and I think she's done that. She has done that recently, so she's more familiar. But as I'm looking at this, I'm really wondering if it's going to be instructful to the student if I'm like, why don't you come with me for a day or two, like outside of Victory Center, and see how the other parts of the division work.
Sure.
I don't know if that will help her.
Oh, I would encourage.
Yes.
Okay, because I didn't know when they have to do their presentation on the agency, if it has to be so specific to Victory Center, but she's learning more outside of Victory Center.
Well, usually, my experience with students in the classroom doing that is, that she'll be talking about Victory Center, but she's going to put Victory Center in the context of, Frontier Health, and so that, it's perfect for her to see how that's all connected.
Yeah, I agree. I think anytime you can send your students out to something different to get a picture of what it's like, it's helpful.
Yeah, in our agency, where their main thing is going to be the social work department, our orientation, they go to all departments of the agency and participate in that. They may be spending some time upstairs on special projects. And all they may be doing is entering data or moving boxes around, but they're gonna get a feel for what that special project part, or they may spend some time in the milk pot.
Right,
Or feed people.
right.
But that's all part of the orientation, so they're gonna get that in the first week or two.
Great. And then if there are agencies that you refer to or you get referrals from, send the students there. Give them an assignment. Go spend an afternoon at Good Sam and see what they really do. Work with your fellow student. That person can actually do a little bit of an introduction for you, and then just sit down in the waiting room and watch, because you're going to learn. I know the first time I was going to be a field instructor, I was really nervous. I was uncomfortable thinking that it was such a big responsibility. And was I really up to the task? And what if I messed up something? And I'm here to tell you that you will. You'll mess up something, and it won't be the end of the world. In fact, that's something I wish I had said in there. Students will make mistakes, you will make mistakes, and the way you handle them is what really works. It's beautiful when you see somebody, a supervisor especially, who can say, darn, I didn't do that as well as I wish I had done it. This is what I would do if I had a chance to do it again, because that kind of gives the student permission to go, oh, well, I really didn't do something well, and I've been trying to keep it a secret. Because students, it's hard for them to come forward and tell you anything that might be going on that hasn't gone well. So what about the rest of you? How are you feeling about this whole? Stacy?
I'm actually terrified because I'm a little bit different than all of you because I don't have a background in social work.
I don't
So
either.
when
I
I
don't
look
either.
You're really...
I didn't either.
Okay,
You
good.
have lots of help.
Okay.
And sometimes it's easier to go, I have no idea. I'm clueless. Go ask somebody else.
So when I look at like the evaluation, there's a lot of stuff I don't even know about.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why the student does it first. So you go,
That's what that is. Okay.
yeah, you did that really well. Yeah.
Hey, is it okay if I say I have no idea too?
Me too.
It is okay, Matt, even though you're a social worker.
I mean, we all do that.
I'll get back
I
to you
think
with
that's important.
that.
And
Exactly.
that lets the student know that you're human too.
Yes.
And it can be a learning experience for everyone to journey together.
Well, and I thought, last year, I'm a librarian.
I used to
This
be a
social
librarian.
worker-
I can totally relate.
Cool.
Yeah.
This social worker person is working with libraries.
Right.
And, my fear was there wasn't going to be enough social work. There was plenty. Yeah, it was too much. But the other part that I realized as the summer went on, and I hope that it's the same here, they're learning how to be adults. They're learning how to work. They're learning how to deal with bureaucracy. Because, we all have to deal with it. I work for the state. And learning how to get everything done that you need to do while dealing with that maze of craziness. And funding, we've all got funding issues. And if they can still learn to love what it is that they do while dealing with reality, and my car won't start, and I can't get my funding to even finish this semester, and then I'm working at this crazy agency that I'm not really even sure what they do, that's huge. And they come out at the end and say, I still want to be a social worker. I want to go get my master's. I want to go to the Denver Public Library where they have a social worker on staff and work with them. That's, those things, that's what it's all about. It did happen. It did happen. And one of the libraries actually, through all of this, actually changed one of their job descriptions, and they actually hired a social worker. Awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
I had her as a student.
Oh, Sherry, yeah.
Yeah, a classroom student. not
There you go.
an infant.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I might be a little bit
The Bristol Public Library is trying really hard to get that off the ground too, because they see the need for social workers in the library.
You can go out that way. Oh, okay, thanks.
Is at the library. And
Coat?
to see them, oh, that's fine. I was gonna go back in there, but to see the number of homeless people in the library is tremendous.
Yes.
Yeah, your new director was my assistant director. It's all my fault. Yeah.
So, it's going to be okay.
Okay. I'll hold your hand.
Thank you.
And you can call your liaison anytime.
Okay. Because I just want to make sure she's getting what she needs.
Yeah.
And, okay.
She will. I'm sure of it, Stacy.
Well, I've had her all this last semester too. She's done a lot. She's already a part of the river, so
Okay.
I know what I'm getting into with her, and she knows what she's
Good.
getting into a lot already.
Okay.
That helps.
Good.
Yeah.
You,
I look at this stuff and I'm thinking, I'm not gonna be able to tell them how to communicate well with those clients, and that's something that I sometimes struggle with, being in a case manager role without the formal training. But, you know, there are things in here that I feel really comfortable in guiding her through as far as policy issues. I mean, I've been working on policy stuff for years, and grant writing and program development. Those are the things. So she might get a little bit different of a flavor than what she got in the classroom too.
Okay. Yeah.
and that's fine.
Okay.
Social work is such a broad profession that pretty much everything that you all do in your agencies will fall somewhere in social work, or social work will fall somewhere there.